Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board for the City of Birmingham, Wednesday, May 13, 2026. Will we please call the roll?
Sarah Klein.
Present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries. David Larson.
Here.
Daniel Sher.
Here.
Janelle Winkle-Boyce.
Here.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Duncan Curry.
Here.
Missy Rahman.
All right, we are quorum. A couple of things I'd like to first note for the record that Duncan Curry is a voting member tonight. And we have a new member of the board tonight, Dave Larson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Hopefully we don't scare you away tonight. But we're lucky to have you.
For me.
But welcome. Let's go ahead and review and approve the minutes from the meeting on April 22nd. Any conversation, corrections, regrets? Mr. Chair.
Good guess. On page 3, item K1, bullet 2 in the first line, Haynes Square is should be Haynes.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
No.
Better than spell check. Anyone else on the board?
No.
Hearing no, I would entertain a motion as amended.
So moved.
Motion, Ms. Winkle-Boyce.
Second.
Second, Mr. Williams. Conversation at board level. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Welcome, everyone, tonight. We have a bit of a hybrid meeting tonight with both site plans and a very special study session tonight. We will get through these with all alacrity. There will be a process involved that everybody will have an opportunity at each topic to provide public input if they so choose. I will call for that at the appropriate time. There will be a little bit back and forth between the board, the staff, and perhaps even applicants, but if you are interested, I will then call for public comment at the appropriate times during each element tonight. I'll have a little bit more to say on the study session item later, but I think it's appropriate to just kind of move forward here to tee up for that. Mr. Dupuy, do we have any changes from the agenda as published?
No changes.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive right back in. We've got a special land use permit and a site plan and design review for 260 North Old Woodward, which is Terra. These are two separate approvals for those keeping score at home. One is the site plan and one is the special land use, but they are so linked that we're going to talk about them all at once and then decide where to proceed from there. So, Mr. Dupuy.
Thank you, Chair Klein. Terra Kitchen and Cocktails. It's an existing food and drink establishment, which also happens to sell alcohol for on-premise consumption, thus necessitating a special land use permit. They purchased the former establishment, the Maury, in 2024 and has been operating as Terra ever since. As a part of purchasing that restaurant, the Maury, formerly known as the Maury, they purchased their site plans and they've been operating the same approved outdoor dining facility that this body and the City Commission approved in 2021, which is an outdoor dining platform in the North Old Woodward right-of-way. It takes up about 4 parking spaces, just under 900 square feet, just under 40 seats. At this point, the applicants come forward, approach the planning department looking to install what I call a shade structure over their existing platform. The shade structure is constructed of aluminum, it's painted black, and it does span the entire width and depth of the platform. The roof structure is made of a corrugated steel while the posts are aluminum. I guess at risk of sounding overly simplistic, there are a couple of standards, design standards, that do apply to overhead weather protection as it relates to outdoor dining platforms. Really only that they be made of high quality materials, and 2, they must measure a minimum of 8 feet from the platform and a maximum of 10 feet. At that short side, because it's a little angled, it is 9 feet, and at the tall side, it's 10 feet. So I argue in the report that they do meet the provisions of the outdoor dining ordinance. And I suppose thus, I've got the applicant in the room as well, should you have any questions for them. But I'd like to pass it back to you, Chair Klein.
Okay, let's start with any questions we have of staff. Let's start there, Mr. Boyle.
Just like the rest of the outdoor platform, do I take it that this roof structure can be taken apart with a certain degree of simplicity or not?
I would assume so. Now, I haven't asked the direct question, but he knows he has to. He knows it's
Sure.
April 1 to December 31st, so it's going to have to come down.
Thank you.
Ms. Boyce?
Nick, you said in your report that the outdoor dining platform is 900 square feet,
Yeah, just under.
but maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I'm reading that the patio length on the drawings submitted by the applicant are just under 40 feet by 15 feet, which is 600 square feet. So,
Are you on this page?
which is it?
Oh, I'm sorry, probably not this
The
page.
plan?
This page?
Plan view.
This page, sorry.
That's okay.
Up the way.
I just want to know which it is, if it's 900 or,
So 15 by 40? And you're saying that's 600?
so
That's not 900.
just
Well, it's very possible that
little
my math skills need
clarification. Is that all it is?
some clarification.
It's
How about
just-
that?
Okay, I just didn't know.
It could
if
be
they
all it
had
is.
a
I
bigger
plumbed that from the
platform
old
than was
report.
presented in the drawings, or?
Okay. Forgive me. I literally just pulled it from the 2021 report. So back in 2021, sounds like our math was off.
Okay, all right, no, that's okay. Just wanted to know which was right. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? I have one, Mr. Dupuy. I'm a little concerned that structured roofs like this are not listed in the zoning ordinance as the type of overhead weather protection that are allowed. We talk about umbrellas, we talk about awnings, which would obviously be attached to a building, or we talk about canopies, which are the fabric canopies that we see. There are a few of them out here on Pierce, actually. We don't have anything that discusses roof structures over outdoor dining, let alone outdoor dining platforms in the street. How are you coming up with the idea that that's allowed?
Sure.
I mean, I guess I kind of thought all my years that Michigan zoning was more of a permissive zoning where we list what you're allowed to do, and if it's not in there, you can't just say, well, you didn't mention it, so we can do it. I have severe concerns that this isn't even allowed, on top of my own personal opinions, which you'll hear later. But what do you think, what's driving your question here, your decision here?
Yeah, great. So my answer would be is that the provision says such as umbrellas, awnings, canopies, that it is not intended to be an all-inclusive list. And if my memory serves me correctly, I thought when we were drafting that language, 3 years ago now, we wanted to provide a little bit of flexibility because we were so prescriptive previously. For example, like with chairs and tables, we said metal or wood only, but we've been presented with a lot of other high-quality things in the past. So I thought what we had decided was that we wanted to not be so prescriptive. So,
Well, I won't assume to speak for the rest of the board, but I can tell you that when I voted for it, that was absolutely not what I for. Fine.
okay.
Other questions for the applicant, or for for staff?
My
Mr. Larson?
first official question. It's towards the street. Is there a gutter or something that would collect the water, or is that just a splash zone?
Yeah.
At this point, I would call it just a splash zone. I do not see a gutter on any of the plans.
Okay. Other questions? We'll bring up the applicant. Maybe you can provide some color. No? So the applicant is here. Please come forward, introduce yourself, and, fill in any blanks that you feel necessary. We
All right,
appreciate you
guys.
coming.
Nice to see you guys all again.
You as well.
Randy Fumia, owner of Kitchen and Cocktails. Honestly, we went through our summer last year. It was like, have this beautiful big patio and just seeing weather change quick, little sprinkles. But what we found to happen is a lot of people just like come run in. If you have 40, 50 people sitting outside, it's just like a little raindrop forces 40, 50 people to come inside this restaurant. Bills not paid and everybody scrambling. So, just kind of discuss with Nick, trying to do something that's covered. To us, we're going to be spending a lot of money on this. I totally understand where you guys are coming from too. I'm not here to argue what the right solution is. I just think it would look much nicer instead of, last year I invested in 5 different styles of umbrellas, the huge big ones with the weights and the rocks that hold them, and even just the wind and stuff. It really didn't work on our side of the street. And I think it'll be, a nice upgrade to the restaurant, a nice upgrade to the patio, and just allowing people, if there is minimal rain, to not panic and run inside for those reasons. And I think people will enjoy it a lot more. And I think it'll make the restaurant a little bit busier.
Questions of the applicant? Anyone? Mr.
Just
Blood?
repeat the question. Did you speak with your contractor and/or architect about how this is put together and broken down?
Yes, just as the patio is, it comes in pieces. So it'll have like sections as we install and our normal style of takedown and setup. It's pretty simple,
Okay, thank you.
pretty simple.
Ms. Boyce?
So I have some concerns about the construction drawings that you provided, and I wondered whoever did those, if they might be able to answer some questions, or if you might be able to speak for them, or if not, maybe I can just tell you what my concerns are.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
Based on what we have here tonight, there's some real discrepancies in these drawings that would cause me not to be able to probably support this tonight. And I can start with the page that's up. When I looked at this, I went to compare these drawings, different sheets. One of the things I wanted to understand was how this would be mounted to the wood frame. And you'll see right there, it says, structure enforcement mounting depends on the situation of the world. So I assume it's a typo, but it's still a typo that I don't know what it's supposed to mean. And there's not any... There's no real description. Beneath that, and I don't think it's on the screen, it says something about 7 pieces should construct and putting together a show line. If you scroll up, you can see that down there. Again, I don't know what that means. The dimension across the top of this section is 185 inches, but in plan, it's 180 inches. When you get to the plan view of the structure, it shows the I guess we'll call them, I think they're called the supports that go, like the ribs that go underneath that hold up the metal. I calculate, assuming this is 180 or 185 inches, like 45 to almost 47 inches of distance between those. And so I did a little math, and I don't think that those steel panels can be supported in that wide distance. I imagine the building department would pick up on this when you submitted plans and talk to you about it, but nor do I think that steel supported at that distance. So I think there's some real problems with your plans that you would definitely need to work out.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, this is something new to me, actually. To like, if you guys want a different material, I just think it's needed for us. I'm okay making changes. If you guys tell me to do something totally different, I'm okay with it. But I just feel like I just wanted a covered patio. Any way possible, or I know like if we want to do it like material like Toast has outside, I'm open. So whatever makes you guys happy, I'm just here to, support it and get it done.
I don't think we usually do it that way exactly.
Yeah, I'm just saying if we don't want to go the metal route,
Yeah, I think you
we
might,
can.
Nick could maybe explain if there's like I don't know exactly, but
Yeah.
I just see some real challenges with what was presented, and
Yeah.
so that's hard for me to be able to square.
I think there was still a kind of a gray area with the covered patios in the city too. So we didn't know what to really present either on our end, whether it should be something like this or if it should be fabric or whatever. So we were kind of in the air of what we should do style wise. And, that's what we got drawn up. Unfortunately, I don't know if you guys are happy with it or not, but I'm willing to change it if you guys are not happy with it, and come back and propose something else if you guys want.
Other questions of the applicant? Mr. Lars?
As an architect, we deal with wind a lot.
Yeah.
I'd be concerned about how it's that temporary platform.
Even the lateral rigidity, yeah.
Yeah, and pergolas are made all different ways, and I'm not sure how the bracing, how it looks only to me visually, and
Yeah.
the darkness of the structure.
I mean, I'm sure
see other
that
things
the
there.
drawings and stuff don't do it justice, but, I mean, I'm not going to install something by, like, me installing it. It's going to be a professional company who knows what they're doing and is going to secure it and, of course, I'm not, I'm not here to bring in a Mickey Mouse and just come install this thing. We're going to hire a really good company to come put this together. But again, I'm open to listening to whatever you guys want.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw it open to the public. If anyone from the public, whether here or at home watching on Zoom, wish to comment on this particular proposal, if you're here, you can come forward to either of the microphones and I'll call on you. If you are at home, you can use the raise your hand function at the middle center bottom console of your Zoom. I don't see any hands going up. I don't see anybody standing up here. So we'll bring it back to the board. You know my opinion on this is that I don't believe that this roof is compliant, and I don't think it's what we want. With due respect, it looks like a carport, and I don't think we should be installing these in our right-of-way, let alone in the traveled way or the parking areas. I want Terra to continue to do well. It's a great addition to our city, and I know it's packed a lot. But awnings, canopies, or umbrellas. I mean, it's outside for a reason. It's not supposed to double your interior space. It's outdoor dining. So I would be very supportive of something that was canopy or something of that nature, I suppose, if it was done right. But I share Ms. Whipple-Boyce's concerns as well, so, as well as yours about the drainage. So I don't know what the rest of the board feels.
I think acoustically, sometimes a single sheet of metal can be, very noisy,
I share the chair's comments and what Janelle said. On the other hand, I have walked past this building when the wind damage to the umbrellas was really devastating. They lost heating, the heating structures, they lost their umbrellas. I don't know why it's particularly windy at that point, North, just because you sort of come up and it tends to suck it in. So I can understand the applicant's concern about continuing with umbrellas. But I also think that it does have an industrial look, and perhaps an awning system like we have right across the street might be worth exploring.
Mr. Williams.
I agree, and I think an awning system would be better, but I'm not a big fan of umbrellas at this location. It's a combination of the wind, for whatever reason, on North Woodward, on that side of North Woodward, the wind whips down almost like an aisle. So I'm not a fan of umbrellas at this location. On the other hand, I agree with the concerns about the current proposal. So it needs to come back with something different, but I don't think the answer for this location is umbrellas. It just isn't.
Hearing that, if the applicant wouldn't mind coming forward, hearing that, I think it's pretty clear that we're not moving forward on this tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
But as a business that we want to help support, if we postpone this, is this the kind of thing that you think you would be able to
For sure.
redesign and
Yeah,
come back
for
within a
sure.
month?
Again,
Or, well, what's
yeah.
is next month, 2 months? What?
No, next month, sooner the better. Speaking of like when you walk, right there. So like even when our, unfortunately, sometimes even with like 65, 70 degree days, you know how our doors open? We can't even open them sometimes because like the wind that comes into the restaurant just wipes everything. I don't know why, but it's just right there. The wind is just really heavy. I mean, like I said, I have proof of like receipts of like $5,000 umbrellas that I bought, and they're just boom, and
Understand, we don't want you to install anything
yeah,
that's gonna
even
cause
with
you problems.
heaters and stuff, same thing. They're just nailed in, just so like,
All right.
yeah, I can.
Work with
no
Nick,
problem
work with
coming
staff,
back.
and
Perfect.
come back and we'll
Perfect.
see what we can do.
Appreciate you guys. Nice seeing you guys.
Thank you. All right, Board, I would entertain a motion to postpone this to a date certain to help keep moving this along. I believe our next meeting in June for site plans would be the 24th,
So
because we only have one meeting in May.
I'll move postponement of the consideration of this item to the meeting of June 24, 2026.
Second. Motion, Mr. Williams, second, Mr. Curry. Conversation at the board? To the public, anyone in the public care to comment on the motion itself? This is the motion to postpone until next month. Anyone on the board, in the public care to comment on the motion? Seeing no hands, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Thanks, we'll see you next month. All right, moving right along to our second item, or actually third item, which would be the site plan and design review for 34952 Woodward and 690 East Maple. This is a request for a preliminary site plan for the new building, mixed-use building on that corner. We've seen this a couple of times, though there is some complexity here. But thankfully, we got a good team working here. So, Mr. Dupuy.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Yes, highlight on preliminary site plan approval. It is designed to give an applicant tentative approval on the bulk height uses, big general items, so that they can begin to develop final site plan level drawings for that next stage in their application. So as I mentioned before and briefly, this is going to be at its highest a 9-story building and now at its lowest a 5-story building. I explained last time that they have access to bonus stories in both the MU5 and MU7 zoning districts in which they're in, a bit of a split zone property. They are taking advantage of those bonus stories on those portions of the site for reasons of which I'll get into later, but the short version is parking. It generally has not changed much else. As I mentioned last time, there will of course be conversations about landscaping and lighting and materials and all of those things at final site plan, but we've taken preliminary looks at them all and everything is trending well, I'll say. And as you know, the applicant team is pretty aware of those as well, so we're not concerned about that. The things I've got to mention specifically tonight are, one, because of the change in the MU5 portion of the building, which back here by my hand is, well, I'll call it sort of the back or east part of the building. Although they're not seeking bonus stories and they are meeting the story maximums there, they do, because of the grade changes on the site, exceed the maximum permitted height by nearly 3 feet in that particular area. Now, the maximum height is 66. They're proposing 68.7, something along those lines. They'll explain a lot about why. Aside from the average grade, they've got a pool in that area and a pool deck that comes up well above the roof line. So based on the requirements of the zoning ordinance, there's really no way around needing a 3-foot variance. They feel they've got a good case for it, but that's something that changed, and that's something that I'd like a little commentary on for the Board of Zoning Appeals when we get there.
Mr. Dupuy, they still need the variance for that, the mezzanine because of its size, correct?
Yes.
That
yes.
hasn't changed.
That has not changed.
So they're going anyway, so,
Yep.
Okay.
It'll now just be 2 instead of 1.
okay.
The second thing, of course, the focus of this entire, almost the entire conversation being parking. Now, I mentioned that the reduction of the 6th floor in the MU5 portion of the building being significant. That not only, 1, reduces the bonus floor area, which then, 2, lessens the required publicly accessible parking total, but it also reduced some units as well. Alongside that, they've also combined several units to get to a much lower number than they were 3 weeks last discussed this. So at a high level, at the end of the day, they're required to provide 507 parking spaces. They're proposing 422, because at the last meeting we considered those compact spaces and we all sort of agreed that those are permitted. So they are short 85. And I think the motion language we've built for you reflects those numbers. If you, it's always confusing, the percentages that I'm throwing at you, but please understand that formally it'll be a 32.4% reduction. But in our motion language that we discussed last time, perhaps if you were to consider the compact, it's down to 25.5% reduction. Yeah, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams.
So I think you've done a good job highlighting the big picture of the changes that the applicant has made from April to May. I'd like to go over the specifics. In April, they were proposing and required usage of 344 spaces. They now are 334 spaces, which is 10 fewer required spaces by ordinance. They changed the makeup of the rooms. In April, we had 123 units proposed of 2 or less room units. That's now down to 93 for a 30 reduction in units of 2 or less room unit. 3 or more room units, we've increased from 94 to 110. So in total, we've gone from 217 proposed units now down to 203. The elimination of the level 6 MU5 portion is significant. The required number of additional parking spaces in April was 29. Those now have been eliminated. The reduction means that the total required bonus public of 198 in April is now down based on nation, and the change in the room sizes is now down to 173. So in total, we've gone from 542 units, as Nick has pointed out, down to 507. The deficiency itself has been reduced from 120 down to 85. To me, I would just simply say that's a significant change from April to May. I think the applicant, in my view, has been responsive. Although it's not part of the zoning ordinance calculation, I think it's important for the public to understand that the required usage here based on retail, restaurant, commercial, and residential is 334 units. They are providing 422 under the proposal, which means, in my interpretation or my language, there are now 88 spaces proposed for public usage, which, although not 173, is still significant in this area.
You're saying exclusively?
On the east side of Woodward.
Exclusively?
Yes, on this side of Woodward. So those are categories where the changes has been made. I think it's important for the record to break down each of the categories. The retail, restaurant, and commercial usage components have stayed identical from April to May. The changes have been the elimination of the floor and, I guess in terms of rooms, more larger rooms, I guess is the way to say it.
Thank you. Mr. Dupuy, do we have anything else to continue?
I strategically ended on that.
Did you now?
Yes, so I'm very comfortable.
Wise man.
Our recommendations are the same.
Wise man.
We're very supportive.
Well, I see the very talented crew is here again tonight. Did you have anything to add to the conversation tonight before we talk about it a bit more? Please.
Sure. Victor Soroki Architecture. We're here with our team as we were in the past. Also have the owner-developer, Beztech, Sam Beznos, and his team are here. Nick's done a good job. Brian, I think your analysis was good and accurate. We did obviously eliminate the sixth floor. That was a significant cut from the request in our last meeting. And then, so it resulted in a loss or a reduction of 29 spaces that were required for that extra floor. And at the end of the day, we still kept the 422 spaces. And I think we all acknowledge that the compact cars and tandem car spaces are real spaces, and thank you for that. We appreciate that. And the calculations of asking for a 25.5% area reduction is accurate. By the way, it's fair to say that of the 422 cars, only 23 are compact and tandem. And that's about 5%. So it's really low. It's not like 25%. It's a minimal number. We still see this as the one opportunity to get significant public parking in the Triangle District from a private development. I will go on to say there are two sort of important variances. I know one we discussed and one is sort of new. I'm going to kind of go over those just because I think they're sort of important. We are still asking for the variance on the mezzanine parking. I call it the hidden floor because it truly is hidden. We have a 2-story retail volume and lobby volume, and we're able to insert a level of mezzanine parking. It's technically not considered a mezzanine because it exceeds the definition of mezzanine. It's a little more than half of the floor that's below it, and that's why it will, by ordinance and code, become a story. We feel that is a reasonable request. It would not even be seen at all from the public. And essentially, we're still, for the most part, in the overall permitted height of the building, except now in the MU5. So we will be asking for that variance. We've actually, as Nick knows, we've just submitted our application for variance in June. The second variance has to deal with the MU5 portion, the smaller part of the building. You know, we have one of the largest sites undeveloped in the city, as we know. And it's actually, when you think about it, you think it looks fairly level, but there's a fair amount of slope. I see the chairman shaking his head because he's an engineer and he understands that, what slopes really mean. But we're required to measure the building height by the average grade, or at the average grade plane. And Maple is high and the alley is low. And when we go and calculate the average grade plane around our building foundation, it's a differential of 5 feet. And when we're asked to measure it in the middle, you wouldn't know that by looking at the site. But when you're asked to measure it in the middle, we lose 2.5 feet. So we don't really have the 66 feet. So we're asking for a variance of 3 feet because of that natural slope that we didn't create. It's inherent in the site. And we're just responding to the way it's measured. In addition, I'll just go on to say that what also complicates it a little bit is that is the ideal location for our rooftop pool amenity because it's up, it's not in the courtyard, and for the sun and the sun angles, it's where it should be. When you build those rooftop terraces, you need some extra dimension because it's a plaza deck assembly for pavers, drainage, insulation, etc. So those things sort of compound the need. Interestingly enough, the biggest part of our building, which is 80% of our site, is in the MU7. We can meet the height requirement there. It's the small part in MU5 that kind of breaks the camel's back in that one spot. So we're only asking for the 3-foot variance in the MU5, which, by the way, is the least visible part of this entire mass. And 3 feet in this entire scheme is not extreme, but we've worked very, very hard with engineers and contractors and everything to minimize this as much as we could. So we hope you will support that.
Great.
We're happy to answer any questions. I think we've all looked at this thoroughly. I know you have, we have. Happy to answer any questions, and I can assure you that we are 100% confident that we will meet all of the requirements at final site plan approval to your satisfaction.
Great.
With
Thank
that,
you.
I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Swerke. Any questions for the applicant at this point from the board?
I have a question for Nick.
Okay.
So, Nick, the proposed motion contains the standard language about meeting the requirements of city departments. Are the recommendations of the traffic engineer, specifically the no left turn onto Maple, exiting the building, is that encompassed within that? Or if that's something that we want to do, we need to call that out separately?
That is a very good question. I think to be careful. I don't think I would include the traffic engineer as a city department.
All right, so if there's something that we should, if that's what we want to do, we should add as a condition, comply with the requirements or the recommendations of the traffic engineer. Okay.
Yes, which just to confirm, I don't believe we did that in the CIS.
Well, no,
So-
the CIS, we just accepted.
Just accept.
Right,
Yeah.
so
No, so we did
I don't
not-
think it would be redundant, even if it was, not a big deal.
Motion that will cover that.
All right, good catch, good catch. Mr. Boyle?
Thank you for working with us and trying to shoehorn this building in with the parking. I'd like to ask a question about exclusivity for public parking. This comes as part of the public-private deal that we've worked on over several months now. But I'd like to hear from the owner and the architect. I know it hasn't been built, and you've got lots of bridges to cross before we get there, but how do you intend to deal with that question of exclusivity for public parking when there will be multiple different users? You've said it yourself, people coming in, perhaps from the residential area, but also for the restaurant and for the shopping and other things that other people from the Triangle District want to park there.
I think we're going to answer this question together. So we're required to have 173 spaces dedicated to the public. And we're prepared, I think, to always sign those spaces and say, this is public parking. And there may be instances where some of the condominiums units or apartment units will have reserved parking, but we will always maintain 173 spaces, if not more. And I'm going to let Sam speak as well, available to the public. There may be times in the evening where we would like to use those spaces because our peak demand, as you remember from our shared parking analysis, is in the evening, really after 10 o'clock at night. And there should not be too much of a demand for public spaces at that time. Our garages from our residents is largely empty during the day, and that's probably the peak time for the public. So this is the ideal scenario of private or shared parking analysis. Sam, I don't know if you want to say more about it.
Sure. As Victor had mentioned, the plan would be to identify, I think I even mentioned that in the first meeting, identify those spots in which will be available to the public as public parking. The intent of the garage is to, like many of the city garages, to have an automated system where you get tickets. So we will be able to measure, the residents will have a pass, and public would get a ticket. And so you'd be able to allow a certain amount of people in the garage based on, the usage, as Victor indicated. So if residents would not be able to use those spots without paying, and we know from the parking study that we've done and we analyzed, as Victor mentioned, the peak demand would only be towards the end, but we will have residential parking identified. There will be retail users that will use, my guess, predominantly public parking as they kind of come and go, and and the condominiums we had mentioned before would likely have some dedicated spots, and we probably will identify some residential units to have specific spots available, but that will be unassigned in the residential area. So the plan would be to have that sort of excess flow, as the parking study, might have indicated, where, at the end of the day, when those spots are empty, those residents that didn't have a residential spot in the sort of the residential area for residents only as identified, they could park in the public parking and pay for that for that period of time. Like many of the buildings that you have around town, parking is not always included, multiple spots are not always included in the rent that people would have to pay. And in this case, if they wanted additional parking, they would have to pay for those hours in which they would use.
Okay. I just would hope that as this project develops, that you can keep a conversation going with the city. We have a parking manager, I believe, and it would be appropriate that he, she, or them are brought into the conversation as you develop that plan that you're talking about, whether it's buying online, adding it to a token, adding it to your phone. There'll be a whole lot of ways that we'll be parking. This won't be here till, 3 years maybe, 2.5 years? Dear knows what we'll be doing with parking in that time. But I think it's important that you understand that this is a resource for the Triangle area and for the city as a whole. And we should be involved in that conversation.
Well, I appreciate that, and we certainly would want to be part of any type of website or anything like that the city has for parking information, being it's a public parking, and, we're building this as a private owner, and the idea would be those revenues would help support those costs, right?
Yes.
That's
So,
what
yeah, so definitely our intention would be to use those, have those spots full.
Thank you. That's great.
Any other questions, Mr. Williams?
I just wanted to make a comment. I recited a lot of numbers, but I didn't make a general comment. I appreciate, Mr. Beznos, the changes you made in response to our April meeting, in which there was an exchange of ideas. And I thought it was important to point out for the record that you stepped to the plate here and made the changes basically that we really wanted to increase the number of available public parking places. And that is much appreciated by me.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, no.
Well, no, questions for the applicant, please, questions for the applicant. Because I still have to go to the public, then we'll bring it back for final comments.
I could wait.
Okay. All right, thanks. We will take this to the public now. Is there anyone in the public who would care to comment on the proposal for this site? This is preliminary site plan, so it is not a final approval, but a preliminary site plan for the development at Woodward and Maple. I do not see any hands going up. I don't see any people coming up. So we will now bring it back to the board for final comments. Ms. Whipple, please.
Just to echo everyone, thank you. Thank you for working with us and hearing us and making these changes. I think they're great. I just want to speak to the two variances you're requesting, just real quick. I'm very supportive of both of them. I appreciate the grade change as you described it, and I think what you're asking for is even less than you could be asking for, frankly. I have no problem with 2 foot 7 inches, or close to.
If I could ask, we're asking at the Board of Zoning Appeals for 3 feet.
3 feet.
Just,
I also have no problem with 3 feet.
okay.
Measure once, got twice, yeah.
I've learned through my years of being an architect, you need a little bit of construction tolerance. Giving us a couple of inches is beneficial.
Measure
Makes sense.
twice, Miss Sarah. Measure twice.
And then as far as the mezzanine is concerned, it's funny because every couple of years, I think we see an architect come who's creative, and they work around our rules or our ordinance, because we always think we thought of everything when we wrote them or when we, put them together. And this may be the first time where we have an architect coming with a creative push on one of our ordinances that makes perfect sense to me. And I just want to say, I absolutely support it. It was creative, it was smart, and it doesn't impact the look of the building whatsoever. And it's a win for everybody. So hopefully the BZA sees it that way too.
We hope so. Thank you. And if in your motion, obviously, if you're inclined to do so, we would very much appreciate, I know the planning board the Board of Appeals likes to hear from the planning board. And if you feel that you support the idea of the variances, it goes a long way with that. So thank you.
Any final comments? Yeah. Mr. Larson.
I was thinking the same thing about the mezzanine. You know, their mezzanines are funny animals, as Victor knows. And the fact that you're recognizing it as a floor and still found space within the inherent volume, you know, I think is a great use of space. And I wouldn't quibble with a couple feet, 3 feet as well.
Thank you.
And, it's a tribute to my poor golf game. I can't see the 5 feet either, I think parking, the discussion about parking, I think it is mutually beneficial for your business plan to have parking that people want to seek out rather than see it as a chore or
Yes.
or frustrating, So I think I encourage that to further discussion.
Great. I'm going to have the final word before we go to a motion, because I think I need to have one. I would also like to thank you and Mr. Besnos for listening and engaging in this conversation the way we did. Got a little heated maybe at times, but at the same token, we were all looking for a solution. So I appreciate you doing that. This is a beautiful building. This is exactly what we want on this corner, and I'm really thrilled that we were able to find a way to get it into a realm of reasonableness. I think for the record, even though Mr. Williams spouted a number of parking numbers, I think it's important to highlight for the record and for the public understanding this is that in this particular zoning district, this board has the authority to lower the required parking specifically for this district, because of the mix of uses in the building, not because we just want to. They have a mixture of uses in this building, a retail component, a restaurant component, and a little office rental space that will overlap in their times of peak use, meaning that having parking spaces to those ordinances level for all three is redundant. And therefore, we're able to, under our purview, reduce those spaces. I personally feel very comfortable right now with this. The retail is going to be heavy at the day, not going to be heavy at all at night. Residences are going to be gone, so a lot of that commercial parking is going to be available from those spaces. The restaurant, 10 o'clock, maybe I'm getting old, but I think it's going to be a little earlier than that in this town at least. And I think you've got it covered with the number of people that are either working late down in Florida, at the size of the units that you're asking for. I think it's going to be just fine. So that is why I am in support of reducing the number of required parking at this point. I would probably suggest for the motion, it's up to whoever makes it, instead of doing 32.4% or what have you, maybe just say, since this is preliminary, 108 spaces and call it a day. Because we have to finalize this at site plan anyway, but, whatever, that's fine. The last comments I would make relate to the variances. I echo the comments of my fellow board members. From a planning perspective, if the Board of Zoning Appeals is listening, the mezzanine is actually one that we probably should find a way to put into the ordinance because it's just a good use of space. And it has no bearing, in my opinion, negatively on the project. And the height is going to be imperceivable on this project. I don't think it'll have any negative input from a land planning perspective. So I would be supportive if the Board of Zoning Appeals found it in their hearts to provide that variance. Real quickly, lastly, Mr. Boyle brought it up, the parking plan. I think more than anything, when you come at final, I think we'd just like to understand a little bit better if you could even just, I don't want to necessarily say show it on the plans, but just highlight to us that these are where the public will generally be parking. These spaces that are dedicated to the public, that's where we're going to direct the public to go use them. So we have more of a better understanding that they're not going to be on the lowest level behind 3 key cards that all of a sudden aren't available to the public. I think that's all I'm looking for is just a better understanding of that.
I think we can do that.
And then lastly, I know we didn't talk about MDOT today, and I know that you're not going to listen to me, but I'm going to ask that when we come back at final, at least tell me that you've, look me in the eye and tell me that you've talked with MDOT, that they are pushing you toward one direction or another, and that kind of assuage my desire to at least discuss the changes to that frontage.
Understood.
That's all I'm asking. I know it's not the city's purview.
And we have spoken to MDOT, by the way, but we can speak for.
Talk a little bit further about that later. That's fine. With that, is there anyone, let's just say the chair would entertain a motion.
I'm happy to make one.
Mr. Scheer, bless you.
Okay, I move that the planning board adopt the findings of the planning department in the report dated May 13, 2026, related to the approval criteria in Article 7, Section 727 of the zoning ordinance, and approve preliminary site plan for 34592 Woodward and 690 East Maple, and grant tentative approval required to develop construction plans with the following conditions. Number one, the applicant must combine the two parcels prior to the application for any construction permits. Number two, the applicant must provide plans that meet the story maximums as detailed in the zoning ordinance or seek a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Number three, the applicant must provide plans that meet the height maximums as detailed in the zoning ordinance or seek a variance. Actually, change the word seek to obtain a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals in number 2 and 3. Number 4, the planning board finds that the preliminary plans presented, which contain a total of 399 140 square foot spaces for parking.
180, I'm sorry.
180 square foot spaces, meet the required off-street parking pursuant to Article 3, Section 3.08G7 of the zoning ordinance is warranted based on the results of the shared parking analysis provided to be finalized in the final site plan and placed on the record with the Oakland County Register of Deeds as required by the ordinance. Number 5, the applicant must submit lighting and material specifications, samples, photometric plan, and other required information for the proposed building and must meet all development standards of the Triangle Overlay District at the final site plan. Number 6, that the applicant comply with the recommendations of the city's traffic consultant, including specifically the prohibition of left turns onto Maple from the building. And number 7, the applicant must comply with the requests of all city departments.
Support.
Motion, Mr. Scheer, support, Mr. Williams.
May I make 2 comments?
By all means.
All right. First, building on what the chairman said, I thought it was important to make certain that the shared parking would, quote, work in the real world. And the parking analysis presented back in March had what I'll call tolerances that were too low. Weekends at max capacity or max predicted capacity, there was a surplus of 1 parking space. That was inadequate, but with this set of changes and the reduction in the overall required parking, I think the tolerances or the excess spaces fall within a reasonable range. So I'm comfortable with that in addition to what all of my colleagues have said. The other is that from a design perspective, say, which is what we deal with, and when I say design, I mean not just the way the building looks, but how the mass fits within the site and relates to surrounding properties. The 2 variances that you've requested are totally appropriate. And I would be, encourage the Zoning Board of Appeals from a planning perspective to be comfortable with them. I did not include it in the motion because I don't think it's our prerogative to suggest whether they should or should not grant variances. The standards are completely different. It's not something we're involved in, but I think if you can report that those planning board members who have expressed an opinion have been supported from a design perspective of the variances.
Fantastic.
Concur with the comments.
All right. Any final comments from the board on the motion? So we'll go to the public one last time on the motion. Anyone who wishes to comment on the motion itself to approve, please come forward. I see no one coming forward on the motion, so we will bring it back to the board. Let's roll call this one.
Did you check the?
I did. Yeah. I've got it up here.
Yeah, all right.
Please, let's roll call this.
Daniel Scheer,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Duncan Curry,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes?
Scott Klein,
Yes.
David Larson,
Yes.
Janelle Wilkes-Booth.
Yes.
Motion is unanimous. Thank you very
so
much, gentlemen. Good to see you again, and we will see you soon,
You will.
hopefully for final.
Thank you for all your support, and thank you for the support on the variances as well. That'll go a long way.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's move forward into the study session tonight, a very important study session as it is. We are going to be discussing short-term rentals. Now, I'd like to, Mr. Dupuy, maybe before you dive in, I know there are members of the public that are very interested in talking about this. There will be an opportunity to discuss this from the public. I do want you to understand, however, a couple of things about the process. I know that you are not necessarily as adept at what this process is as we are, or is familiar with it, so I want to make sure your expectations are properly set so you know what's going to happen. First of all, I think it's important to note that the City Commission has directed us to eliminate rentals under 30 days. This is not a matter of directing us to decide whether that's a good idea, so I would suggest to you that any of your comments tonight, if they are related to trying to convince us of that, are probably misplaced, because we have been directed to do something. Our job is to make sure that if we do it, we're going to not create 4 more problems while trying to solve one. Number 2, the process involved with ordinance changes. What has to happen first is this body, which is a recommending body in this case, has to have meetings to determine what language would be appropriate for the change in the amendment. I'm going to be honest with you, that can take a couple of meetings, even on the simplest thing. So there will be no action tonight in that regard if that's what you were hoping or expecting. It could take a couple of meetings. I will also tell you that there is a meeting of the City Commission and the Planning Board joint meeting in June, one of 2 that we hold every year. This is going to be something that I'm going to ask Mr. Dupuy to put on that agenda simply so we can ask further questions, if we have any, to make sure that we understand the directives and understand, give them an opportunity to respond to our questions, because things will come up that maybe perhaps they had not thought of. We will then, at that point, if we're ready, this board would then hold a vote to set a public hearing at this body to vote on the proposed ordinance change.
With notice.
With notice. That meeting, I mean, earliest I would think would probably be July, just being practical here with the number of meetings. And then that would go on to the City Commission, who would hold their own noticed public hearing in order to finalize whatever they want to do. So I just think it's important that everyone understand what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not trying to slow roll anything. We just have a process of working through, and some of it is legal that we just have to work through in order to do things the proper way. With that, Mr. Dupuy, I hope I didn't steal your thunder. Do you want to take us into the latest request?
As usual, you've done very well. I'm lucky you're retired and not looking for a planning director job. Otherwise, I might be sweating a little bit.
Doesn't pay enough.
And I will be a little repetitive just to drive some of your points home, because I think it's worth it. On April 27th, the City Commission did make a big, long resolution. Several key points within that resolution, lots of different stuff. But as it relates to this body and what we're doing here, there was 2 specific things. One, they placed a 6-month moratorium on the issuing of any new rental licenses for shorter than 30 days. The time frame is important here, as you mentioned. We've got a specific amount of time to accomplish this within that 6-month moratorium. The second very important piece in that is they directed the Planning Board to, 1, find somewhere in the zoning ordinance or build into the zoning ordinance somewhere a restriction on rentals and introduce a minimum of 30 days. That's that directive that Scott mentioned that is called a policy decision. They'd like us to find a place to put that, not consider it, just find a place to put it so that it makes sense. The second bit is a bit more broad in that they also asked us to evaluate the impact of rental housing density in the city. So I think what you'll find, or what you found in the report, is an attempt to do those 2 things in the sample language that I provided for you. 1, introduce a new residential permitted use, in this case rental unit, define that to include the minimum of 30 days, and then 3, create some use-specific standards in which I put the density requirements in, among a couple of other things. I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned here that this is the zoning ordinance work that we're doing, that we have purview over. There's a section of the Birmingham Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Article 6, Division 4, that also deals in rental leasing type regulations. That is not the purview of the planning board. It is the purview of the city commission, though. I want to tell you that you'll hear a couple of things from me tonight. Should you have what will be good ideas that perhaps aren't quite zoning issues, I might suggest to you that's a great thing for Chapter 22. And in order to make this a little bit easier, I think, I would do something a little bit unorthodox, is I would work with all of our staff, the city manager, the attorneys, the building official, to make those changes alongside these zoning changes, so that when we come back, you can start to see both, and start to see the entire ecosystem for rentals in Birmingham, so I don't have to just promise you it's there and hope and wish. So I think you can expect that in the future. So I hope you don't mind in advance that if I feel dismissive or deflective, it's just that I think there's a better place for it, because ultimately there will be two places in the code of ordinances that these types of things will be regulated. So I think with that, I'm here mostly to hear about what you have to say. You're again, great ideas, I'm sure. And then let's have a conversation. I'm ready to do so, Mr. Chair Klein.
Okay, well, I mean, if looking at what you've provided us, you know, there's 147 pages of each individual zoning district that would have to have a word inserted. I'm not sure that I really care too much about diving into those tonight, if that's okay.
That's plenty fine.
But the meat of this would be the section that you've created, is it 5.02?
Yeah, the use-specific standards?
Yeah, the use-specific
Sure.
standards. What page is that in our packet? I'm sorry.
I think the first
There's so
one
many.
starts on 126.
So many.
126?
126?
And they're all the same. So the use-specific standards for each are all the same.
Exactly.
So it is a bunch of fluff, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, correct.
So 126 of the packet, you'll be able to find the first example of use-specific standards.
So at this point, I guess I would like to throw it open perhaps to the board. Do we have any input or comments to discuss on this particular set of new language? I know it's brand new to us.
So,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, please.
I've got quite a number of comments about the way this is structured.
Me too.
I guess I'm going to, as we like to say here with respectfully, I guess I'd like to suggest we talk big picture back down. I think that's, you know, I think that helps. If we set the big picture, that helps kind of the detail of
Fair.
the use-specific standards. So if I may.
Go for it.
So I think that as I look at this, the chief things from a zoning perspective that we want to deal with are transience and accountability. Having listened to both meetings at the City Commission, and some of those testimonials were very powerful, very moving, frankly horrifying. That seems to be, to me, I took away that those were the key elements that we could address in the zoning. That being the case, and looking at the breadth of the way these ordinances were structured, I think we want to be thinking about a couple of things. One is I've got the new category, rent or rental unit, which is how it's kind of structured. The last page of the packet of changes is actually kind of really the first. It sort of sets it. And I have some changes that kind of broaden the coverage of that, fix some legalese. And I've talked to Nick about those, and, you know, I don't know that we need to go through them now. They probably will show up. Those that he thinks are worthwhile will probably show up in the next draft. But one of the things I think we have to consider is that there are a variety of, I'm sorry, let me back up. Once you make this a regulation of all leasing and occupancies, okay, there are several things we have to think about. One is there are folks who rent their houses for a year while they're on sabbatical or out of town or something like that. That's, to me, based on transience and accountability, that's a different thing, and I think we need to think about that, okay? I think we need to be thinking about owner-occupied. And by, that could mean one of two things. It could mean that somebody's renting a room while they're in the house. And again, based on accountability, I see that as a different situation than an owner renting out the whole house and not being there. And that's arguably covered by the part of the ordinance, zoning ordinance that talks about rooming houses or roomings. But I think definitionally it needs to be a little bit better. And then I think that we need to consider, again, in this broad picture, you know, what about folks who aren't renting rooms or renting the house, but are having friends, family, guests over for a weekend? And my sense is that, you know, if you have, and I've had this happen, where people are coming in to town for a wedding or some such event, and they're staying, you know, with us. I don't think that's what this is intended to look at. So I think what I'm suggesting in the way that we did redoing the definitions was we make sure that everything, all short-term occupancy agreements are covered, and then we find some ways to back out and say, okay, well, these couple of things we're going to treat differently. That makes sense. Rooms.
So I think what you're saying is from a definitional perspective, not a matter of arguing about number of days, et cetera. You're saying as we define things, we want to make sure that we're not defining them in a way that causes us difficulty for things that were unintended.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
So it may-
and things that we know have happened in town for years and years with no problems, because again, they, you know, going back to transients and accountability they're not there. Now, related to that is a policy question of whether we are worried about, or whether the city commission or somebody is worried about, short-term rentals in the office and business districts where hotels are already permitted, which are necessarily transient. So in those districts, you know, may we appropriately, or should we appropriately, regulate rentals of less than 30 days? And if so, can we legally do it, and on what basis? So that's something we may want to talk to the council about, the lawyer about.
But I think just for summary from Mr. Dupuy, what you're suggesting is, and I agree with you, that perhaps in the June meeting with the city commission, clarify their position on, did they intend this to be in the MX district, where there's naturally a mix of uses and there are already commercial uses in the building? Was that their intent?
Yeah.
I don't know it was or wasn't. I just want to make sure we understand that that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm suggesting, and I think this, part of what this process will do, and I don't think my review, you know, over a couple of hours on the weekend is the final say of it. Other folks may say, oh, you know, what about this, what about that? So I think that's something that we need to think about. Then there's let's see, bear with me. ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Are they, you know, I know they're a whole separate subject in the master plan, but are we going to say you can't have them? You know, you can't rent them? We're going to say you can rent them, but you can't rent both your house and the ADU? If you're in your house, can you rent the ADU? That's an item of discussion, and deal with those, because if we don't cover ADUs, then that's a potential loophole that, causes its own set of problems.
And that, if I could just interject, I think that's a complication of the discussion where we want to accept out a room within a dwelling. And so how do we deal with ADUs?
Right.
In the context of, is that a room? Or is it not? Definitionally.
Yeah. Right. Now, the last kind of big point, and then I can jump to maybe some smaller, narrower items.
Let's do the big points first,
Yeah,
and we can
okay.
go around and see if there's any other
All right, so
comments on the big
but my last big point comment is, we don't usually have a preamble, but I think this is a case where we want a preamble. where, and by, we want.
Intent.
We want, it's kind of an intent statement, and it's a finding of, we find that this ordinance is necessary because, and I would, again, focus it on transients and accountability, and there's.
Neighborhood character, nuisance, all of
Yeah,
that.
all the sorts of zoning things, to make it clear that what we're doing is within our reserve powers under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act.
That's fair.
This may or may not attract attention from rental platforms, and I think that, just so the public understands and potential landlords understand what the purpose is here and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yep. So, that's good stuff. Well, let's start with that on the high level. Mr. Boyle.
Two points. For members of the public and anyone who's listening in, if we were asked to make a zoning change from some other body, we would deliberate intensively, with knowledge, with understanding, and with research.
Big concern is commercial.
My interest in this particular case is a question to the staff, and that is, and I think it's been answered, that we have a period of time to deliberate about this. Am I right? So we're here to learn. For example, if we were going to look at a zoning or a change to our zoning ordinance, we would expect at least two things. One, data on how this would affect land uses and properties in our own city. We would have a spreadsheet. We'd have maps. We would have GIS. We would have information. And secondly, and most importantly, we would have comparative zoning ordinance changes from similar sized cities. That's what we would do before we made a decision of this nature. We would deliberate and learn as to what we're doing. So that's my first point. And if we're going to be able to do that, then I'll go along with you. But I'm not going to go along with this if we're not going to deliberate effectively and learn what happens. My second point is getting more detailed, and that is the word all, which appears.
The word what?
All, A-L-L. This will apply to all rental properties. Well, let me do my own research, and you can do your own research as well. You can do it right now. You can ask the question, where are short-term rentals applied in adjacent cities in southeast Michigan? You can see it right now. And I'll tell you what you'll find. You will find that the word all isn't used, but the word residential neighborhoods appears everywhere. But we don't separate it here. We say all. And that worries me. We're a planning board, and so we should relate to land use and activity in our city. And I can tell you what happens in the Rail District or in the Triangle and right down here is not the same as in my neighborhood in Poppleton. And I would think we need to think long and hard about whether we apply this to, quote, all the neighborhoods, all the areas, all the land, all the buildings in the city of Birmingham.
And Mr. Boyle, I understand everything you're saying, and I agree with you for the most part. I would just simply say in this particular case, most of the time we whine about City Commission providing us a directive without any clear policy decision being made, and us feeling like we're the ones being forced to make policy. Here's a case where they have clearly made policy, and we can't whine about them making policies and taking away our ability to do things. I agree with you that we need to look at surrounding communities, and I agree with you we need to make sure we understand the implications of what we're doing so that we can inform the commission. We're going to have this meeting in June. I think your point about all residential versus all units versus residential areas, I think we need clarity there because I did not read all uses when I read it originally.
Right.
I read residential neighborhoods. So I just want to make sure we understand what the commission's understanding of that was and engage in a dialogue during that meeting about perhaps the pros and cons of them making that decision one way or the other.
Valid. So one follow-up, Nick. I mean, I would like to see when we have further discussions, the data, because as my colleague Mr. Scheer said, we've got lots of different sorts of rentals. And we need to have that data. We need to see it mapped. We need to see where this is going to occur. I tried to do it myself, as we all could do. I looked for a 3-day rental in Birmingham yesterday, and found a house at $10,000 a week. I thought that was expensive. But I also found some at $2,000 a week. Okay, you get my point? We need to know what we are talking about. Serious as this issue is, and I understand how serious it is, we still need to go through the due diligence, as it says on this piece of paper.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I think in the context of all, I think Birmingham is a little different than communities in the sense that we have a lot of housing in what we would traditionally call commercial areas. Downtown, I mean, we just looked at one in the Triangle area. So I think we need clarification from the City Commission, which seem to be focused on neighborhoods. Well, I would argue that the Triangle District is going to be a pretty big neighborhood with over 350 residential units in a commercial district. So, in addition to the 4 streets, or I think there are 4 streets within the Triangle area. So, this is not easy. The complexity of the city itself is going to create some pause for concern, because simply saying neighborhood, Poppleton Park, that doesn't answer the question for the city as a whole. And in the residential areas, and I go back to the biggest problems we've ever had on this board have been in adjacencies to residential areas. And in those areas, which may not be defined as a neighborhood, they may in fact be commercial, but they're going to affect neighborhoods if they're right next door. So that's a complication that we also need to deal with. So you've got commercial, you've got residential, you've got residential within commercial, and you have these borderline areas where anything that happens is going to affect residential. And so in my own personal view is I need clarification from the City Commission on what do they want to do about these border areas, in addition to the downtown areas and the Triangle area and the MX district. So it's not clear to me that there's been directive on all of these fronts, and I think we need it.
Let's make sure we know. Sticking with the high level and definitional, one other thing I questioned, and I don't know whether we need it, but I'm going to throw it out. Eliminating rentals under 30 days, pretty clear, but that leaves a bucket of 30 days to 365 days all in one group. Now, is that okay? Maybe. I'm not suggesting it isn't. But I also don't know whether the City Commission has in their mind any thoughts on those being different. Is a seasonal or midterm of 30 days to 6 months? I'm spitballing. Any different in their mind than a year? I mean, to me, this goes to the heart of the 200-foot rule, the density that you're talking about, because I live on a street with 3 or 4 year-long leases on our street, 2 blocks, and they're part of the neighborhood. I mean, it makes no impact to the neighborhood quality. They're residents of the street. Mm-hmm. Someone there for 31 days, is turning over every month. Any less nuisance or any issue? I don't know. I'd like to hear their thoughts on that at the joint meeting to know whether or not we need to break down the definitions even a little bit further. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to incentivize year-long leases versus shorter leases or not. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole if that's not anything that they're concerned about.
I think that one of the things I took away from at least the city attorney's comments to the commission about why she thought it was a good idea to have us look at it was our expertise in land use. And so I take from that we have the freedom to come to a conclusion amongst ourselves on some of these difficult questions and make recommendations. And, the commission can react to it. To the extent we've identified things by the joint meeting, that's fabulous. But even after, if something comes up, I think.
Agreed.
It's going to be a little bit of a process, and we have, I don't think we'll even come close to using it, but we have 180 days less, whatever the day was they had adopted the moratorium, to get the job done. So, and I'm sure we can do that, but I think it's going to take a little bit of thought. Mr. Boyle says some data. We were fortunate, Nick gave us, I think, half a dozen ordinances, many of which I don't think, many of which came from resort communities on Lake Michigan, so not the same. But, nonetheless, it was kind of a start to see the way folks started thinking of things. But anyway, I think, as we usually do with complex questions, we're going to take some time and give some thought to it and get public input and get the staff to get us the best thinking from the planning world side and come to conclusions.
Ms. Whipple.
We were, I guess, directed to evaluate the impact of density, right? And so some of the language in this very beginnings of a proposal here talks about the density limitations, and I look forward to digging into this because, as the chairman pointed out, I, for example, live on a 40-foot wide lot, and my neighbor on my left is a renter. My neighbor on my right is a renter. And until just recently, my neighbor across the street was a renter. For the entire time I've lived there, they sold the house across the street. And those people are all part of my neighborhood. And I've made some good friends because of them. And I certainly feel concerned about the idea of no more than 5% of the total dwelling units located within a block. These words don't sit well with me. So I want to dig into this especially. The other parts seem less controversial, and Dan pointed out some really great stuff I didn't even think about. But that one, that's a lot. So I can't wait to dig into the data and understanding what from the city commission and evaluation of the impact of density actually is, because this seems pretty strong.
So on a sort of more micro level, picking back off that comment, there's, if I think we should be, if we're anchored to transience and accountability, there's a real question about whether even for 30 to 90 day, whatever, less than a year, we even need or want density. I don't think we do for, year leases, but there's a question of whether we need it. But, when you start looking at the density, well, how do you measure density? Is it a radius? Is it next door? Is it across the street? Is it back to back? I mean, that in itself is a complicated question. And then what the right amount is, assuming that there is a density limit, what that is and how you measure it and how you set it out is not a simple question. So I think it's fair to say that, the City Commission has given us a difficult assignment, which we'll do as best we can in the time we have, but we've always striven for quality, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so.
Right. Why don't we dive a little bit more into some specifics now that we've had this beginning discussion? And this is the first meeting, so we know we're just kind of reacting to what we've seen and throwing out questions and ideas with the actual ordinance language itself. Nick, I'm going to give you later some thoughts. I would say that the language of these sections is a little it's not quite as clear and efficient as I would hope, and how I think the rest of our work is. It seems to bounce a bit. I don't even really see a sentence that flat out says, no rental should be less than 30 days. It's kind of almost implied by the language, and I just want to make sure we're very clear about what we're doing. To me, I would organize these by just flat out saying that all rental units must be licensed, and 2, they must be for a period of no less than 30 consecutive days. And then I would try and talk about successive stays or corporate transient housing, talk about how those can't be used as loopholes under that same just general discussion of what is the length of period.
Yeah, and just, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought I did that in the definition. I know it was a lot of text, but I look forward to hearing what you have to say if that.
I think it's got to be in the ordinance where we talk about the requirements of rentals. I think we have to flat out say it.
In the use-specific
I
standard
think so.
section.
I think so. As we get into density and spacing, I'll just give you my comments while we're here.
Sure.
I think those could kind of go together, the density and spacing, and I think you can be a little more efficient. I'm like Janelle, I don't have necessarily any real concerns, personally at least, about year-long rentals and having any sort of cap or density on that. I mean, heck, there are neighborhoods in this community where Little San Francisco strikes me as one where half the houses look to be rentals. I don't think it's a problem as long as they're part of the community. I do wonder whether or not the density question would be better applied if the commission is concerned about it to that middle period, that midterm, whether it's 30 to 90 or 30 to 6 months. I don't know. Something we would have to dig into. I could understand then looking at, okay, capping it at somehow. I think Ferndale did it 5% of a block. I think you're suggesting a census block, which you're the only person in this room outside of Mr. Boyle that knows what census block they're in. Maybe we come up with some other way so that there are only so many licenses per planning district or something. I don't know. But I'm open to, to kind of having that conversation on the shorter term. But I'm just giving you my input. I'm not really sure I understand why we would do it for long term.
Yeah, cool.
I get your advertising. That makes a lot of sense. I agree with Dan that we got to come up with things on the ADU. Just what are we talking about? Just so we can define it. Frankly, we need to make sure that apartments that are within these commercial districts are exempted, because that's by their very nature, not from the 30-day per se, but from any other restrictions that we're going to have density-wise. A couple other things that jump to my mind.
200 units.
Should we not at all be discussing the number of people allowed to stay in a whole house rental? I've seen some communities that cap it at 2 per bedroom and a max of 10 or what have you, but if one person rents it for 30 days and they've got 18 people staying over, that's probably not much of a less. Is it in the code?
It's in the code.
Yeah,
I read it
Is it?
today.
Okay, I did want to make sure
It
it's
is in the
covered.
code, and
Perfect.
it's worth having a conversation if you think
That's
it belongs
fantastic.
in the code or zoning ordinance. I think
Okay,
probably
that's
code,
great.
but it does, yeah.
Same with parking and other things that we should consider.
Yeah.
Then, I've got a couple ideas related to incentivizing, if that's what the city wants to do. I'll skip those for today. But I wonder aloud whether or not, if we're looking at caps for density, whether we want to worry about the number of rentals owned by any individual or any entity. Trying to assure that we don't have someone come in and own 100 rentals and start setting the market. I don't think that's happening nowadays, but while we're talking about this, I might throw it out there. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues with attainable housing is corporations buying up homes and renting them out at high rates and depleting the market. But I throw it out there. So those are the kind of things that I think I'd like to see next time when we talk about this, a more detailed discussion of those and input you may have on that.
Mr. Chairman, can I also
Mr.
add
Boyle.
a slightly more detailed question? I'm very keen to examine the extent to which different types of neighbourhoods, which are zoned differently, have the potential for having different rental contexts. So the 6-month moratorium, I understand that, and we're using that. The minimum of 30 days, is it also for discussion or not?
I don't think so.
That was direct, that was the direction.
No, after the 6 months. Are we discussing that? For example, is it possible we could discuss amending the number of days depending upon the land use of a particular area, like the rail district?
If I can repeat, are you suggesting that we take care of the directive, but then after the 6 months, take your longer look?
No.
No.
No, that's not.
No,
Okay.
I think you're questioning that whether 30 days is in every district. Is that what
Right.
you're questioning?
In perpetuity. It's more the question of the 6 months.
6 months has nothing to do with us, other than that's the time window we have to work with. That's a moratorium on new licensing.
Fine. Okay. So therefore, everything is negotiable or just able to be discussed, analyzed, assessed, and reviewed.
With the exception of the fact that the city commission told us to establish a minimum rental occupancy of 30 days. End of story. Now, we could question, do they mean that in every location?
Thank you. That's all I wanted to get.
But it's been very clear that that's the directive for now.
Okay, I'd like to say that we should actually discuss that in light of what other communities have done in this region. That's what I'm saying. It's clearly the case. Ann Arbor has it.
MX district, the downtown district, should the rules be the same? Yeah, I mean, I think the further extension of Robin's point is, should the 30-day rule apply neighborhoods, MX areas, downtown,
Correct.
commercial buildings?
Correct.
It's not clear to me,
No.
and we need guidance
Right.
on that issue.
I think we move forward under the guise that it is exactly as it appears, that they want it to be 30 days everywhere, knowing that we've only got another meeting to kind of work our questions up, and then we're going to the joint meeting where we will get a final answer to that
Yeah,
in short order.
yeah.
What I don't want to do is sit here and wait a month.
No, but
You know, not doing anything.
But the focus was neighborhoods, and
Understand?
Right.
that isn't going to cover the whole city.
Well-
We need to,
Well,
Well, it might.
it might.
it might.
Says all here.
All covers the whole city.
Is it here?
I think we have to proceed with that as the starting position, and we go through our process, and we get to the joint meeting, we can ask as many insightful questions as we need.
Fine, thanks.
I don't want to get lost in that question, though.
No.
As opposed to putting in the other work.
Okay,
Other comments on the language to date?
no,
Good.
none.
This direction? No? Okay, good. I'm going to open it to the public. Anyone from the public care to come forward and provide their input? The way this will work is you can come to either microphone. Please wait for me, because I'll call on you. You just introduce yourself, generally, whether you're a Birmingham resident or not, and then provide your brief comments. I would like to make sure that everybody speaks, so let's try to keep them brief and succinct, but we do want to hear what you have. There are also people online that are raising their hands. I will go back and forth between the two to be fair to everybody. So please, ma'am.
Hi, Eve Pickman. I live in Pembroke Manor. I've lived there just shy of 4 years this time around, but I'm sort of a Birmingham old-timer for those of you who remember the Music Land at 12 and a half in Southfield. I shared a house, rented a house, with 4 other girls in the mid to late 90s on Manchester. One of the girls' fathers owned the house. We were bad tenants. Not me, I was always at work, but we were a bad party house, and our neighbors hated us. Now that I'm a homeowner in the area, I have slightly different opinions. First of all, I want to answer your question about the 30-day rule. This gentleman remembers me bringing it up a number of times at the last 2 city council meetings. You've probably also heard my comment. The reason it exists, if you are a registered sex offender, whether you are the person who has secured the short-term rental or a guest or a family member of the person who is renting the property, you have 3 business days to notify law enforcement of your location in a short-term rental. Well, if you check in on Friday morning, you're gone by Sunday night, Monday morning, so that is kind of a moot point. However, if you are at an address for more than 30 days, local law enforcement is required to notify the people in the neighborhood that there is a registered sex offender. That's where that 30-day language comes from, just so that's clear for everyone. I don't know if you all are familiar with Pembroke. We have a park. We have an elementary school, and we have Derby Middle School. Very few of these kids ride the bus. The ones that aren't being chauffeured in the family SUV or minivan are walking or riding their bikes through my neighborhood. There are, I think by my last count, 9 of them, short-term rentals in the R1 center of the neighborhood. And then there are a handful on Coolidge that are also short-term rentals, plus there are a handful on Maple. In those apartment complexes, there are short-term rentals within rental apartments that you can rent from anywhere from 1 day to signing a regular, I don't know if it's a 3-month lease, 6-month lease, whatever the leasing company, year lease. I also have a number of rental houses in my neighborhood, which is exciting now that they tore Kmart down and U of M's building a facility. I think we're going to see lots of medical professionals coming through on internships or fellowships or whatever, also with our proximity to Beaumont or Corwell. I can understand the appeal. There are 3 rental houses within 5 blocks, 5 houses of me in either direction. All good with that. However, short-term rentals represent a different situation. Different people coming and going all the time. In fact, over this winter, when we had snow emergency days, there was not adequate parking for the number of vehicles assigned to houses, short-term rentals along Coolidge, short-term rentals along Yorkshire, short-term rentals on Derby, short-term rentals, I think those are the big 3 I caught. So they're parking on the street, snow emergency, now all of a sudden guests are being parking. So the conversation about the big new complex, their conversation about parking's something you all need to address with these short-term rentals as well. Furthermore, since the Michigan Supreme Court decided last year that these are commercial properties, even if they're in an area that's zoned R1, many of these properties, like the ones that rent for $10,000 a week, have swimming pools or saunas or hot tubs or all of the above. If they are commercial properties, do they not get covered by the health department for inspection of said pools and hot tubs? This is a question that I have not been able to get answered. And then the last thing about big conglomerates buying up large numbers of these rentals, I'd go one further. A number of communities here in Michigan, I believe Ann Arbor is one of them, that says the property owner must live within X number of miles of the facility. There are currently 2 short-term rentals in my neighborhood that are owned by a couple of guys out of Ann Arbor. I went to school in Ann Arbor. That's not 10 miles away. We have owners who live in Royal Oak. We have owners who live well outside what I would consider an appropriate drive time, especially during orange cone season. So these are all things I would ask you to consider as you move forward, but I wanted to clarify what that 30-day number was all about, because when I announced it at the first council meeting after the unfortunate incident on Lincoln, people were really freaked out by what I said because they were not aware of it.
Okay.
And that is the reason for the 30-day.
Thank you.
So, thank you. This is important. I used to be a renter in the neighborhood. I'm pro-renter. I'm not real fond of short-term rentals.
Absolutely. Understood.
And the short of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go online. Narlu Castellano, I believe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If we could unmute Narlu
Yeah,
Castellano.
no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. Please introduce yourself and provide your brief comment.
Thank you so much. I'm Narlu Castellano. I live at 1553 East Lincoln Street for the last almost 10 years. That's where the street where the April 11 shooting occurred. It was 5 houses away from my house. I woke up to gunshot wounds, and I'm quite concerned about safety these days. That event is the reason this board is having this conversation, and I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that as we work through the details of a proposed amendment. I do appreciate the board's work on this. Regulation is hard. I'm not here to make it harder. I'm here to ask that we stay focused on the problem we actually have. We don't need to resolve problems that we don't have. The problem is in long-term rentals, in my opinion. It is not ownership, owner-occupied properties. It's not the family renting out a room or a responsible landlord with embedded tenants. In my opinion, the problem is short-term rentals under 30 days that operate as de facto party venues in residential neighborhoods with no accountability, no responsible party on site, and no meaningful consequences when things go wrong. The proposed amendment, in my opinion, is broader than the problem requires. When we overregulate, we create compliance burdens for people who aren't causing harm. We invite legal challenges that slow everything down, and we take our eye off the specific conduct that brought us here. Here's what the data already tells us. In 1 week of active enforcement under existing rules, the city issued more than 20 citations. We learned that last week, more than 20. That's not a gap in the law, that's a gap in enforcement. The tools exist, but what's been missing here is the prioritization. So my ask is simple, narrow the amendment, focus on this sub 30-day rentals with a track record of nuisance and disorderly conduct, strengthen enforcement of what already exists before adding new layers of regulation on top of it. Know what we're talking about here. Keep safety, not administrative tidiness, as the standard against which every provision is measured. A child on my street, my child, asked a police officer if she was still safe in her home on April 11th. That's the problem this board was convened to solve, what the city commission directed you to address. Let's solve that one first, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, welcome back.
Hi, David Nguyen, 1457 East Lincoln. I want to thank everyone for taking this up so quickly on the agenda. I know it's not normal, but we didn't have a normal situation, as you understand. I think the important thing that I'm getting here, I like the focus on the short-term rental. I think you're staying on track there. I think density is a distraction at this point. I'm like you. I have a rental property that's next door to my house, and they've been there 4 years, and we have barbecues together, okay? They're part of the neighborhood, and it's the only way they can afford to live here, to be honest with you, is to rent my house, okay? So I think if you're looking at, I think density is a distraction. I like what was said more, maybe in the long term, is how many rentals can someone own in this, in Birmingham, right? That, then it becomes an issue of property being available, right? So that may be more of the angle to look at versus density itself. Because I know where I live in the Lincoln area, there's a lot of bungalows. A lot of people can afford to rent them, and they're good renters. It's when we got the short-term rentals starting to creep in is when we got the problem. So,
thank you.
But I want to thank you for taking this up. The other thing to remember is, that was pointed out in the last meeting, is there's a moratorium on new rentals. It doesn't stop short-term rentals today.
Exactly.
Whatever you come up with, if it stops short-term rentals, they will not end until April of next year when they come up again. The licenses come up again. So there is time here. They can extend the moratorium. Okay? I think we got to get it right. I understand that Birmingham has a lot of border districts, right, where you got commercial next to residential. And I think you got a little time, if they're willing to extend a moratorium, you got some time to work some of those things out, okay? Because really, they don't go away completely until April anyway, so.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. I see no one else online, so we'll come back over here.
Hello, Kelly Kozlowski, Birmingham resident, no relation to Commissioner Kozlowski, just for reference. I live on East Lincoln as well. I'm situated with my husband. We're in a house that is about 6 houses west of where the shooting took place, and another 6 houses down, there's an Airbnb. There's an Airbnb directly across the street from us. We live next door to a long-term renter who is a neighbor, not a renter, a neighbor. I myself, like others in the room, started as a renter in Birmingham because that was the only way I could afford it. So I do value the long-term rental opportunity that we have in this city. The short-term piece of it, I did just want to offer some additional color because I am in this, I think, a slightly unique position of being surrounded by all the different use cases. The house across the street from us that's an Airbnb, we've had longer-term renters there, longer meaning like up to a month, several weeks at a time. In one case, it was, I think, 3 weeks. They were shooting some sort of film. They had commercial lighting rigs. They had an RV parked in front of the house for days at a time, which is what we saw directly out our window. So I appreciate the 30-day minimum that the commission is requiring. I also just want to note that even at that 1 month mark, you get some weird use cases, as we've experienced in the couple of years that house has been there, or as an Airbnb. So did just want to note that. I also appreciate the urgency and the timeline that you've been given. I recognize that's a challenge. You probably weren't anticipating having to fit this all in this amount of time. I also was not anticipating spending 12 hours over the last month in city meetings. I do appreciate the efficiency of this group in the last commission meeting. They didn't invite public comment on this topic until after 11, so we spent a lot of time in a meeting just to be able to speak on it, so thank you for running so efficiently. The last thing I'll note is that in terms of the border neighborhoods and what we might classify as relevant to new ordinance versus not, in our case, the shooting that took place on my street, the shooters fled to other streets in all directions. So while we might think that, you know, if we're focused on a particular footprint with an ordinance, that's where the implications stay. In my experience, that has not been the case, so would encourage the planning board to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, welcome.
Evening. Larry Ling, 644 Bird Avenue. I also want to echo appreciation for this body to take this up quickly. It is an issue that's really important for a number of reasons, not the least of which was that shooting we had here, you know, to a lot of residents here. I love data. I'm a data-driven person, but I would urge you all not to let perfection be the enemy of progress. You have been given a fairly clear mandate, you know, find a way to put this in zoning so that it will stick, and just to address the 30-day issue. I agree that the density issue and the distance issues are probably distractions. Personal view, probably not necessary, certainly not the issue we're trying to deal with. And trying to deal with those as well as numerous other things that have been mentioned here will probably just slow you down. And I hope that we will not say we have 6 months to do this, let's take a full 6 months, rather find the expedient way to get this done quickly so that you can then move on to other things and everybody who feels passionate about this can feel that it's been dealt with quickly and effectively. But I thank you all for your attention on this.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public here to
I'm sorry, it's me again. I got like 2 seconds, I forgot one line item. You were talking about the new complex that's going in and the mixed use. We've got apartments, we've got houses, we've got condos. Most condos in their HOAs are very specific about not allowing short-term rentals on their properties. So that's something else to consider as you are starting to work your way through the zoning. And now I'm going away. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Hi there.
Hello.
My name's Cassie Sobelton. I'm a resident in Birmingham. I've been at the last few city commission meetings, and I've spoken at them, and I believe you were the one who brought up the nuance between the owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied rentals under 30 days. So at the last 2 meetings, it was discussed, and I believe unanimously agreed that the owner-occupied would be some type of carve-out for that, but I'm not seeing it on the paperwork here. So is that something that could be added to that paperwork, as that was the intention of the city commissioners?
We can certainly add it into the fray. I think what we've discussed is what we're working on is from that very specific resolution, which your comments came technically after. So we would work to clarify, I think, as we plan to work.
It's one of the questions we're going to ask the commission in the joint meeting as to whether or not that was the intent, because it's not in the resolution, but I mean, we've heard people talk about it, and it's part of the discussion that will be held.
Okay, and so there were also a couple other things you guys brought up that I wanted to tell you today, just based on, as having this property, so we only, rent a few weeks a year, and it's always to really responsible individuals. You can really control who is renting your place, and especially when you live there, it's your stuff, you're going to be very careful with that. It's not disruptive in a very different way than some of these other rentals. But I get a lot of requests, just so when you're thinking this through, from people who are having their homes remodeled from people who are displaced for fires or floods, and their insurance or their, themselves, they want to live within their community, right, where their kids go to school, where whatever. So they get I just know this because I've gotten so many requests. We don't leave our house for 30 or 90 days, but there's a lot of people. I'd say we get like 25 requests like that a year. So like, as you're looking at the 60 to 90 days, I think that's something to think about, because there are a lot of people displaced from their homes that would want to rent in this area. But yeah, those are my comments.
Great,
So
thank you very much. I did that when our home was being renovated, actually down the street. I see no one else standing up. I see no one else online raising their hand. So I will now bring it back to the, Patty. All right, Patty, I'll let you in. Patty's iPad got it in right at the buzzer.
Unmute. I would just like to ask
Can you
where
please?
I could send some of my thoughts, because I don't want to waste anybody's time right now. I am in a condo with bylaws, downtown Birmingham. I don't understand the difference between a hotel or a short-term rental versus a short-term rental. So I'm just asking who I could send my thoughts to.
I would suggest that you send them to the planning director, Mr. Nicholas Dupuy. His email is definitely on the website and under the planning department page, and he would be the perfect person to send all of this information to.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will bring it back to the board. All right, board, I think this has been a good first discussion. I think we've got some valuable input from the public, and I appreciate them not only coming today, but also being as civil and forthright as they've been. Comments? I know I have some thoughts, but anybody have any other thoughts burning in them before I guess I'd like to suggest as we continue that, Mr. Dupuy, you've got some cleanup on some language to do. I tend to, and this is just my initial reaction, I tend to agree that the density question is really only important if the commission really wants to get into somehow regulating midterm rentals. And I think it's somewhat of a distraction as well. I tend to agree with some of the conversation that we've heard from the public. I'm not suggesting that we have the power to just scratch it off because it was directed to us, but I'm wondering out loud if we should, over the course of the next meeting, come back with some revised, cleaned up language that maybe takes that out of it for now, adds in discussions of anything related to parking, accountability of someone being within X miles or someone, a registered agent being close. All of those conversations, the things that we had talked about, as well as some of the definitional items that we discussed at the very beginning, knowing that we have this series of questions we're going to have to ask the commission before we get into the nitty-gritty on any such density. Because I think that really, to me, comes later, after figuring out what we're actually trying to regulate, where we're trying to regulate it, and what sort of controls we're trying to put into place.
Yes, and after I bring a little bit of data, as Robin suggested, I think our job of evaluating the impact of rental housing density will be done. I think you'll be able to decide based on the comments you've heard tonight, your feelings, plus the data. I think next time we'll be able to, for lack of a better term, close the book on that directive.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't have to do the work.
Yeah, we do. We do. Any other comments?
No.
Questions, concerns? Great.
Just still listening.
Yeah.
Getting educated.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dupuy. Good stuff, as always. We will bring this back up at our next meeting. We do not have a meeting at the end of May because of Eid, but we do have one second week of June, correct?
And I welcome the time to be able to work on this.
yes.
So,
What, the next
very
meeting,
much so.
what's the date of the specific meeting so the public knows?
June 10th.
June 10th.
June 10th.
That's the joint meeting?
No,
No.
June 10th is the next meeting of this body.
It's our meeting.
Here, 7:30, Wednesday, June 10th. The
And
public,
when is the joint meeting?
June 15th.
15th. Is there a location?
How about the gymnasium?
There's not technically a location, but just so you're
As of
prepared,
yet.
it's usually either at the library or DPS for space reasons.
Over on Eaton.
Probably in this case, we might go for the library.
I think that would be better. That's a better room, but.
So, but that will all be noticed the same way you found this agenda, and it'll be, hopefully be very clear, but.
And just for the record, that meeting is generally intended for the planning board and the city commission to engage in a conversation. So public comment is taken and it's encouraged, but it's really an opportunity for the planning board and the city commission to talk, as opposed to just shuffling papers back and forth, to make sure we understand what's going on and make sure they hear us. So that will be the intention of that meeting, just so you know. All right, with that, let's move forward. No pre-apps, right?
Ooh, that'd be fun. No.
All right. Project updates, any questions on the project updates?
I wanted to make a comment on the joint meeting, too. Remember, we also would need to discuss zoning in general. Not
Yes. Yes.
So we got two major topics to discuss.
Well, I think next meeting, you can bring us what you plan to talk about at the joint, right?
Which I would have loved to do today, but
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So it will have a little less time to flesh things out, but I would bring you like a draft memo like I had before.
Yeah, but it's not just the short-term rentals. It's
No,
got to
yeah.
be the zoning.
It's those two topics and that's it,
Right.
frankly.
Okay.
That's
Because
plenty.
we promised them we would
Keep them
take it to
updated,
them.
yeah.
Yep.
I promised.
Yeah, I didn't promise.
You weren't here.
All right, let's look at
AWOL.
the agenda for June 10th. We just talked about it, short-term rentals, zoning ordinance project update.
Yeah.
So those two projects, excellent. That's on June 10th, June 24th. Well,
We got the one project that's been postponed.
one project has been postponed. We're probably going to be talking about this again, I would assume, on June 24th.
That'd be fine with me, and I have something I'd like to prepare you for.
Okay.
Oh.
Because it matters. The 35001 project is coming back,
35.
the former Hunter House site.
Hunter House, yeah.
Why is it coming?
That expired, right? It has to start.
Yes, they gotta start over.
Start all over, yeah.
It is a full restart, and I mean pretty full
New
restart.
team, too. In fact.
Whole new team, both ownership and design. I think they've frankly taken some advice of mine to kind of freshen it up a bit. So, but it will be a familiar concept, I'll say.
All right.
That may not be as
When is that?
the 24th. They're planning on the 24th. So, oh
Late
yeah,
June.
that's a bummer. But
It's way better than summer replacement TV. This is so much more informative.
Wednesday nights at 7:30 every other week. Come on in.
All right.
Yeah.
So, is that a CIS on that? Okay.
So it's going to be juicy, and so I
Right.
don't know.
Let's just be, Nick, let's, careful in promising anything else we have on the agenda. I don't
yeah.
want to get CIS and preliminary and this and that and the other all in one meeting until we're all racked up. So please,
Yes, I am
help guide that.
super with you on that.
Okay, cranky.
Crankier.
It's a meeting just before we do a public hearing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Crankier.
All right. With that, any other business before the board?
No.
Seeing none? Good work. Meeting adjourned.